Since February 28, 2026, Iran has fired 414 ballistic missiles, 1914 drones and 15 cruise missiles at the UAE. That is 2,343 weapons of war aimed at one of the most visited cities on Earth. And the UAE has stopped over 90% of them. Every single day. For 29 days straight. This is the story of the most intense missile defense operation in the history of the Middle East. And why, despite stopping almost everything, 11 people are still dead. The scale of the attack. To understand how remarkable the UAE defense has been, you first need to understand the scale of what Iran threw at it. On the very first day of the conflict, February 28, 2026, Iran fired 137 ballistic missiles at the UAE in a single wave. 137 missiles. In one day. The UAE intercepted 132 of them. 5 landed in the sea. Not a single one reached its intended target on the ground. Defense analysts called it an unprecedented interception rate. Effectively 100% on day one. Since then, Iran has averaged 9.3 ballistic missiles per day every single day for 29 days. On top of that, Iran has sent wave after wave of drones. Over 1,900 drone attacks in total. More than half of all the drones Iran has fired at any country in this entire conflict have been aimed at the UAE alone. The first and most powerful line of defense protecting the UAE is the THAAD system. Terminal High Altitude Area Defense. The UAE was the first country outside the United States to ever deploy THAAD. They bought it from America in a deal worth approximately $3.5 billion. And right now it is the most important piece of military equipment in the entire Gulf region. THAAD works by intercepting ballistic missiles at extremely high altitude. Over 150 kilometers above the Earth. That is the edge of space. The missile does not explode near the target. It physically collides with the incoming warhead at tremendous speed and destroys it through the force of impact alone. The radar system that guides THAAD, called the ANTPY-2, can detect incoming missiles from over 1,000 kilometers away. It is one of the most advanced radar systems ever built. And each one costs almost $500 million. Below THAAD sits the second layer of defense. The Patriot missile system. Specifically the PAC-3 variant, which is designed to intercept ballistic missiles at lower altitudes between 15 and 40 kilometers above the ground. Think of it this way. If a missile somehow gets past THAAD at the edge of space, the Patriot system is waiting for it at a much lower altitude as a second chance to destroy it before it reaches populated areas. The UAE operates multiple Patriot batteries across the country. These batteries have been firing continuously since February 28. According to a U.S. Congress study, in just the first 4 days of the conflict, American Patriot batteries defending the Gulf states fired 943 interceptors. 943 interceptors in 4 days. That is equivalent to 18 months of production from the factories that make THM. Below Patriot sits a third layer of defense. This includes the South Korean KM-Samcheong-II medium-range system, which the UAE also operates. And below that, a fourth layer of close-range systems designed to catch anything that gets through the upper layers. This includes the Russian-made Panzer S-1 system, which combines rapid-fire 30mm cannons with short-range missiles to destroy drones and low-flying threats at very close range. And the Barak 8 system, developed jointly by Israel and India. This layered approach is what makes the UAE defense so effective. A missile or drone has to successfully defeat 4 separate independent defense systems at 4 different altitudes before it can reach its target. The chances of doing that are extremely low. But not impossible. Here is the part that most news coverage misses completely. The UAE has intercepted over 90% of everything Iran has fired at it. That sounds like an almost complete success. And in military terms it largely is. But intercepting a missile at high altitude does not make it disappear. When THAAD destroys a ballistic missile 150 kilometers above Abu Dhabi, the wreckage of that missile still falls back down to Earth. Pieces of metal traveling at high speed. Falling on roads. Falling on residential areas. Falling on people. Of the 11 people killed in the UAE since the conflict began, most were not killed by missiles that got through the defenses. They were killed by debris from missiles that were successfully intercepted. 2 people were killed on Swayhan Road in Abu Dhabi by falling debris from an intercepted missile. 1 Pakistani national was killed near Zayed International Airport the same way. This is the cruel mathematics of missile defense. You can intercept 90% of everything fired at you and people still die from the wreckage of the 90% you successfully destroyed. Iran understood from the beginning that the UAE air defense systems were its biggest obstacle. So Iran did something that most people do not know about. Iran specifically targeted the THAAD radar systems. Because the radar is the heart of the THAAD system. Without the radar, THAAD cannot detect incoming missiles. Without detection, it cannot intercept. Satellite images taken by CNN showed damage to THAAD battery sites near Al Ruwais and Al Sharjah in Abu Dhabi. The storage structures housing the THAAD systems showed dark markings from apparent strikes. In Jordan, a THAAD radar at Muwafaq Salti Air Base was apparently destroyed completely. Satellite images showed 2 craters in the sand near the radar, and the system appeared to have taken multiple direct hits. The AN/TPY-2 radar costs almost $500 million and takes significant time to replace. The loss of even one radar, according to defense analysts, is an operationally significant event. Iran knew this. And Iran went after those radars deliberately from the very first days of the conflict. While ballistic missiles get most of the attention in news coverage, the drones have actually caused more hits than the missiles. And here is why. Ballistic missiles follow a predictable arc through the air. Radar systems are specifically designed to detect and track them. Drones are different. They fly at lower altitude. Their flight path can change at any moment. They are smaller and harder to detect on radar. They can approach from unexpected directions. And Iran has been using them in massive swarms, sending dozens or even hundreds of drones at once to overwhelm the defense systems. Defense analyst Andreas Krieg from King's College London explained that there seems to be a rationing of interceptor missiles happening. Because interceptors are expensive and supplies are limited, the defense systems are prioritizing interception of ballistic missiles. Drones are being allowed to get closer before engagement, or in some cases not engaged at all if they are heading toward less critical targets. This is why drone attacks have caused more hits than missile attacks despite the lower technological sophistication of the weapon. Here is the most alarming part of this entire story. The UAE and its American allies may be running out of interceptor missiles. A U.S. Congress study found that in the first 4 days of defending the Gulf states, American Patriot batteries fired 943 interceptors. Lockheed Martin and Boeing together produce approximately 620 Patriot interceptors per year. In 4 days they fired the equivalent of 18 months of production. THAAD interceptors are even more scarce. The same study found that approximately 150 THAAD interceptors were used defending the region. That represents roughly 25% of the entire U.S. stockpile of THAAD interceptors. And it would take years to rebuild that stockpile at current production rates. The UAE itself has been running low on certain interceptor types. The U.S. responded by beginning to relocate THAAD interceptors from South Korea to the Middle East on March 10. But moving and deploying those systems takes time. And every day Iran keeps firing. Defense analyst Simon put it clearly. Iran entered this war with a massive stockpile of short-range missiles that had never been used against Israel during previous conflicts because they could not reach that far. Those missiles can easily reach the UAE, which at its closest point is only about 60 miles from the Iranian coast. Iran has been using this stockpile deliberately and systematically. The UAE has intercepted over 2,300 projectiles in 29 days. But Iran started this conflict with tens of thousands of missiles and drones in its inventory. Even at 90% interception rates, if Iran keeps firing, the UAE defense systems will eventually face a numbers problem. The interceptor missiles that destroy incoming threats cost between $1 and $3 million each. The Iranian drones they are shooting down cost as little as $20,000 each. Iran can fire 50 cheap drones for every expensive interceptor the UAE uses to destroy them. This economic asymmetry is one of the most dangerous aspects of the entire conflict. So what does all of this mean for the 10 million people living in the UAE right now? The honest answer is that the defense systems are working remarkably well. Over 90% of everything fired at the UAE has been intercepted. The damage that has occurred has been caused by debris, not by direct hits. The death toll of 11 people over 29 days in a country being hit by thousands of missiles and drones is extraordinarily low by any historical standard. But the psychological cost is enormous. People in Dubai and Abu Dhabi have spent 29 nights listening for sirens, watching the sky for the bright streaks of missile interceptions, wondering whether tonight will be the night something gets through. One resident described watching a missile being intercepted directly overhead and hearing the debris fall 2 streets away. She said she has not slept properly since. Schools have shifted to remote learning. Large public gatherings are restricted. Hotels and restaurants are less busy. The Dubai that existed before February 28, 2026 is not the Dubai that exists today. Not because the defenses have failed, but because living under constant missile attack changes a city even when the defenses won't. The question everyone is asking is whether the UAE defenses will continue to hold. The honest answer according to defense analysts is probably yes in the short term, but with increasing risk over time. The defenses are being degraded. Radar systems have been damaged. Interceptor stockpiles are being depleted faster than they can be replenished. Iran is learning from each attack and adjusting its tactics. And the economic cost of maintaining this level of defense is staggering. However, Iran's ability to sustain the attack is also being degraded. US and Israeli strikes inside Iran have damaged Iranian missile production facilities and launch infrastructure. Iran entered the conflict with a large stockpile, but that stockpile is being reduced with every attack. A former senior US Defense Intelligence Agency official stated that Iran has no chance of winning the arms race since their production capacity has dropped while American and Israeli production capacity remains large. The defense will hold. But every day it costs more. And every day Iran finds new ways to test it. 414 ballistic missiles. 1914 drone attacks. 15 cruise missiles. All aimed at one country in 29 days. And the UAE has stopped over 90% of them. It is one of the most remarkable air defense performances in the history of modern warfare. But 11 people are still dead. 178 are injured. And the war is not over. If this video helped you understand how the UAE missile defense actually works, share it right now with anyone who wants to know what is really happening in the Gulf beyond the headlines. Drop a comment below and tell me which part of this surprised you the most. Was it the debris problem? Was it the interceptor shortage? Was it how specifically Iran targeted the radar systems? I read every single comment. And if you want more videos covering the real technical and human story of the war in the Gulf, subscribe to Britain Red Dot right now. Thank you for watching.